Life is Strange is a series that has divided its fans since 2018. The original game, released back in 2015, continues to receive universal praise. Everything else, however, is kind of a mixed bag. The latest installment, Life is Strange Reunion, is no exception. Serving as a continuation of both the first game and 2024's Double Exposure, Reunion had fans worried as much as it had them hopeful. While I think that the first game stood great on its own and I had my share of issues with Double Exposure, I still leaned more on the side of hopeful. Hopeful that, unlike Double Exposure, Reunion wouldn't feel so directionless. Hopeful that, rather than relying solely on nostalgia from the OG, it would actually expand upon the story and core themes of that first game in a meaningful way. Having now played through Life is Strange Reunion in its entirety, I can confidently say that Reunion is certainly a better Life is Strange experience than Double Exposure, but it still doesn't do enough to justify bringing back Chloe Price, a character whose role is pertinent to the first game's story and message. But I still enjoyed it quite a bit. At the time of writing this intro, Reunion has me pretty conflicted to say the least. My initial response after finishing the game was mostly positive, but the more I reflected and pondered, the clearer things became. It has a handful of problems, primarily technical, but mechanically and narratively as well. But it's also a lot of fun, innovates on the typical Life is Strange formula in interesting ways, and just overall has a lot of heart to it. Truthfully, what I think of Life is Strange Reunion isn't wholly reflective of how I actually feel about it. And that might not make much sense to you right now, but over the course of this critique, I'm going to try and explain what I mean through thoughtful analysis and insightful commentary. So please, make yourself cozy, grab a snack and your beverage of choice, and without further ado, let's dive into Life is Strange Reunion. But quickly, before we do that, at the start of the game, Reunion has you select what choices you made for Max's relationships. Why they don't have the option to transfer your save from Double Exposure, I don't know, but this is what we're working with. And if you watched my retrospective on Double Exposure, then you already know what choices I made the first time I played that game, but for context, these were my choices. Just don't clown me in the comments, please. Fuck. Originally, I wasn't going to talk about the gameplay in Life is Strange Reunion because the Life is Strange games don't usually feel too different from one another mechanically, except for maybe how the protagonist's powers work, if they have them. So I thought it'd be kind of pointless to go into it because if you've played one, you've played them all, right? But that's not true. Whether it be the morality system in Life is Strange 2 or introducing a more hub-like world with Haven Springs and True Colors, new entries have always introduced something that sets it apart from the other games. And despite Life is Strange Reunion being an aggressively familiar game, with it pretty much being Double Exposure 2.0 with notes of Life is Strange 1 and Before the Storm, I think it's still worth highlighting what it does to shake things up a bit. For one, this is the first Life is Strange game to have dual protagonists, which at this point in gaming is nothing special. All the cool kids are doing it these days: Ratchet & Clank, Resident Evil, Assassin's Creed. Even GTA 6 is gonna have a hot couple leading the show later this year. But it's still an interesting thing to see in a Life is Strange game. I think Reunion being a decision-based game could have made the dual protagonist thing feel fresh and interesting by having different decisions you make as either Max or Chloe affecting the other person, and pre-launch they were saying that it did, but in my experience there isn't really much overlap in terms of consequences. I'm aware that Deck 9 is not on the same level as Quantic Dream when it comes to deep decision making, but I still like to keep my standards high when it comes to these types of games in general. But even with the dual protagonist thing being mostly inconsequential, I still think that Reunion balances playing as both Max and Chloe very well. I like that the game doesn't allow the player to choose what order they want to complete each character's sections in. I think that would have been a detriment to the pacing, and it makes more sense for this particular story to be told in a more linear fashion. Minus the whole time travel aspect, we'll get to that. But I really like how it consistently feels like things are happening in this game. No time is really wasted. I mean, it can't be because our heroes only have roughly 48 hours to figure out how to stop Caledon from going up in flames. Which brings me to the next aspect of Reunion that I really like. After a photography trip to New York, Max arrives back in Lakeport to discover that Caledon has been attacked, resulting in a huge fire that affects multiple buildings on campus, including the observatory, one of Moses' primary haunts, and unfortunately Max can't do anything except watch one of her closest friends die a horrific death. So kind of par for the course really. After going back to the start of the weekend through a selfie that she took before the trip and then completing what essentially feels like a prologue, this message pops up that reads, "The game is afoot. From here on, it's up to you to find enough evidence to pinpoint the source of the fire. Remember to look everywhere for clues." I think this is really cool because every other Life is Strange game that revolves around some sort of mystery is pretty on rails. Like, the game just kind of guides you to figure that shit out because you quite literally can't progress through the story without doing so. Whereas in Reunion, you can go through the game like a complete idiot like myself, miss a substantial amount of evidence and not figure out who done it, which could result in like full-blown named relevant characters dying. Multiple of them, in fact. I don't feel like we've really seen these types of stakes in a Life is Strange game since Dontnod. They were the ones who made the crazy high-stakes games. Deck 9 have always made the more low-key, chill Life is Strange entries. And I mean, does Reunion come close to touching the Dontnod games in terms of emotion and intensity? Yeah, it kinda does actually. Even though I'm not a person who thinks Deck 9 is incapable of making a good Life is Strange game. I think Before the Storm and True Colors are phenomenal games. Double Exposure was their first miss for me, and it takes more than that for me to completely lose faith. I mean, a broken clock is right twice a day. I don't think I used that saying properly actually. The point is, this is the first Life is Strange game in a long time where I actually felt the weight of my actions, or lack thereof. I genuinely don't understand how I missed out on so many clues. I feel like I searched every nook and cranny of this game. I guess it was some dialogue that I missed. Either way, it gives me incentive to replay and see the other outcomes because, like I said before, you can literally finish this game without finding out key pieces of information, and I think that's cool. Now on to some of my gripes. For starters, pre-launch, Deck 9 hyped up the fact that Max, our favorite photographer, no longer needed to wait for specific photo ops to whip out her trusty Polaroid and take pictures, but rather they were giving players the freedom to take pictures whenever they felt like. Sounds cool in theory, right? And again, this isn't some novel concept, plenty of games do this. However, Reunion makes this mechanic completely redundant by not giving you the ability to actually save the photos that you take on your own accord. Like, what the hell is the point? There were a few moments early on in my playthrough where I was exploring and admiring Caledon's late summer beauty, and I saw something that I wanted to capture. But I guess the game didn't deem them worthy because that's all that I could do. Snap a picture and then back the fuck out. Look, I hate to bring Dontnod into this again, but one of the coolest aspects of their latest Life is Strange-esque game, Lost Records Bloom and Rage, was being able to take actual footage that you captured with Swan's camcorder throughout your playthrough and edit together your own memoirs using it. It's really fucking cool. I'm not saying Deck 9 had to go that hard, it's not really a photo mode per se, but still. What we got is just pitiful, and I think they should be ashamed of themselves, I really do. As far as we know, this was the last game where we play as Max Caulfield and you couldn't let us save our pictures? That's crazy, especially in a game as beautiful and photogenic as Life is Strange. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not really that big of a deal. This game has bigger problems, but it still pissed me off a little bit, not gonna lie. But not quite as much as this game's technical issues. I ran into 0 crashes, thank goodness, but I find that surprising because this game really lacks polish, which is something that I was concerned about considering the time frame between announcement and release, on top of Deck 9's track record with releasing technically rough games sometimes. I'm looking at you, Remastered Collection. And Double Exposure wasn't the most pristine game I've ever played, but holy shit, Reunion is somehow so much worse. The facial animations are so stiff at times, the character models can look very weird at certain angles, and Sophie's hair clipping through her face at this part was driving me nuts. What is this? Like, am I playing Life is Strange or Starfield, bro? What are we actually doing? There was literally a part in my playthrough where I had to restart the game because I ran into a bug where the game just became super washed out and wouldn't go back to normal on its own. As a console gamer, I'm not usually one to complain about technical issues in games. This is coming from someone who played Cyberpunk 2077 on Series S at launch and really enjoyed their time with it. Just give me a steady frame rate and a playable experience and I'll be alright. But the issues in Reunion are far too distracting for me to just simply overlook them, so I had to mention it. Knowing Deck 9, I doubt these are things that will get patched anytime soon, if at all, but we'll see. For now, let's get off this and move on to something a little more interesting.
But if this is a dream, then I'm not asleep. Which means somehow I did rewind time. So there has to be a reason. And I have to find out why.
Okay, so a core part of most Life is Strange games is a cool superpower that the protagonist utilizes to navigate the world and their relationships with other characters, or, in the case of Life is Strange 2, guides the person who wields the power and how to use it. What made the first game stand out from other popular decision-based games at the time is how Max's power to rewind time aids in how the decision-making aspect actually functions, both mechanically and narratively, with the ability to go back and undo your own actions being in direct conflict with the game's main theme of acceptance, being able to live with the decisions you make and continuing to move forward, for better or for worse. That original team managed to introduce a cool gameplay mechanic that doubled as an effective narrative tool that just made sense. Well, guess what? Reunion brings back Rewind after Max seemingly wasn't capable of it in Double Exposure, but apparently Max technically could have if she really wanted to. I guess she intentionally went so long without using it that she kind of tricked herself into thinking that she literally couldn't, even though at the start of Reunion we find out that Moses has been studying her rewind power and how it works. So there is no moment where she rediscovers it because it never actually went anywhere. Max just forgot she could do it, apparently. Look, it's not really clear, at least not to me anyway. They do a lot of weird shit with Max's power in this game that feel very contradictory to what was established previously. But before I can really get into it, I want to actually break down Max's power and how it works in Reunion specifically. So this will be partly me explaining how it works to you, but mostly just trying to make sense of it my damn self. So here we go. If you examine the whiteboard in Moses' office, it has all kinds of data from experiments that he and Max have done with their powers, and Max herself can even commentate on some of them to help add further context. Based off of what I've gathered from reading through Max's journal and examining everything on this whiteboard, Max can only rewind up to 5 minutes into the past without strain, which is interesting as this was never actually specified in Life is Strange 1. Also, Max can alter things when she goes back without causing any supernatural storms, but how much she can change before it becomes dangerous is still up in the air. Yet another thing that kind of goes against what was established in the first game. But the thing that really fucks me up about all this is how photo hopping works. From my understanding, in the first game, Max could only go back to a moment captured in a photograph temporarily, and physically couldn't leave the confines of the space within said photo, and it kind of seems to work the same way in Double Exposure the couple of times we see her do it in that game. And according to the data on the whiteboard, Max and Moses are unsure of the effects of Max going back through a photograph and staying there for an indefinite amount of time, as they deemed it too risky to test. However, the whole plot of this game only happens because Max goes back in time through a photograph and then is able to just go about her life from that point forward. Like, shit is just normal. And when Moses figures this out, he's immediately concerned about the implications of this, what it could do to the space-time continuum, etc, etc. He tells Max, okay, to do her best not to make any substantial changes that weekend. That could fuck everything up, right? But wouldn't her canceling her New York trip and remaining in Lakeport, doing all kinds of things and having all sorts of interactions that she didn't have previously, including saving Loretta from a building that was going to be demolished with her inside, had Max not been there investigating to find out information about a fire that she's trying to stop from happening? I have two questions. One, would these alterations not be enough to trigger some kind of freakish event like the one in Arcadia Bay? Two, have you learned nothing, Maxine? The more I think about it all, the more nonsensical it becomes. Now, I could just be missing a key element that would clear all this up for me just like that, but I don't think so. I truly believe Deck 9 just didn't care enough to make it make sense. There really don't seem to be any repercussions to Max manipulating time in this game. It's weird. I thought Moses telling Max not to change too much was the game's subtle way of telling the player not to abuse rewind, unlike the first game. Like, I literally tried to limit the use of my rewind power because I thought something horrific was going to happen if I used it too much. But no, it doesn't really seem to be that big of a deal. For a game that can only exist because of the first game, Reunion sure doesn't seem to acknowledge it outside of when it's trying to be cute or make you feel all nostalgic. There will be plenty on that in the next part, don't you worry, but for now, let's briefly talk about how rewind is used during gameplay. This could have been guessed by the promotional material, but the rewind gameplay in Reunion is pretty much ripped right from the first game. Except worse. Life is Strange 1 actually allowed the player to get a little bit creative with how they used rewind in certain situations, if at all. You know, it felt like you had more freedom with it. One of the most notable parts I recall is the scene where Max and Chloe are trying to get Frank to give up his client list, and there are so many little things that can cause that whole interaction to go left. You really have to play everything like Goldilocks to pull it off without anyone getting hurt. But guess what? even if the worst possible outcome happens, you can just move on with the game. The game doesn't make you rewind. I mean, I think most people would in order to try to get a better outcome, but you don't have to. In Life is Strange Reunion, however, that kind of freedom is mostly gone. Like I said before, there were moments where I could have hit rewind to get a different outcome or make another character forget something happened, but that's pretty much what it boils down to. In most situations, if you mess up or don't do what the game wanted you to do, you're forced to rewind. Look man, I really hate using this word to describe any type of art or media, but this is just lazy. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. If he wanted to, he would. Deck 9 edition. It's as if they just didn't want to write out different outcomes for certain scenarios. What would have happened if Vin caught me in Owen's office? The world will never know because the game made me fucking rewind. There also aren't any cool environmental puzzles that Max has to use rewind to solve. They weren't that deep or plentiful in Life is Strange 1, but I don't know, I would have liked to have seen more. That's pretty much all I have on rewind in this game. It was very disappointing. Although I will say it was pretty cool getting to see Max's power in action from an outside perspective. It was really badass, to be honest. So that was a highlight. I feel like I've been very negative. I did actually like the game, believe it or not. Let me prove it to you.
We're in it to win it, Max. Lead the way.
I'm so glad you're my partner in crime.
As long as you're my partner in time.
Insert groan here.
One of the biggest issues that people had with Double Exposure was the lack of Chloe Price. Now, if you've seen my retrospective on that game, then you know that I didn't agree with this as a criticism, as I think her absence from the story made perfect sense within the context of Max and Chloe's story from the first game. But Reunion somehow made me understand the Pricefield Mob's issues with Double Exposure way more, as it was clear that the game's story felt more appropriate had Chloe been sacrificed at the end of Life is Strange 1. Life is Strange Reunion, however, has the complete opposite problem, because if your Chloe was sacrificed, it really just makes the whole thing feel a little bit forced. This story not only makes more sense if your Chloe survived Arcadia Bay, but also feels more justified in its existence. As someone who strongly believes that Chloe's death elevates the core themes of the first game, it wasn't until I was working on my Double Exposure video that I actually saw the ending where she survives. And I gotta say, that ending is not nearly as conclusive as the Arcadia Bay ending. Like, no wonder all these price fielders have been clamoring for a follow-up that isn't a comic book. It leaves you kind of hollow. Where do Max and Chloe go from here? It's crazy to think that all these years I thought the price fielders were doing too much, that they just had this weird parasocial obsession with these two girls and couldn't accept the fact that the series had moved on from them. And I would like to issue a formal apology to the Pricefield community for misunderstanding you and misrepresenting you. Not that I've said anything absolutely heinous about you guys. Not on the internet at least. But I still feel like you guys deserve it. From the bottom of my heart, I understand you now. Don't get me wrong, I still think some of you are absolutely batshit crazy, but despite many fans finally getting to see their beloved duo back in action again, like I said at the top, many were just as concerned that Deck 9 would completely fuck this up and tarnish the legacy of the first game. The reason I wasn't too concerned about this is because Life is Strange Double Exposure had already did that for me, so all Reunion really needed to do is A, be an effective sequel to Double Exposure, and B, be a better game than Double Exposure. Reunion succeeds at being one of these, and I'm sure you can already guess which one it is. While Double Exposure did lay the foundation for a Reunion, that foundation was rocky as hell to begin with. And I can't say that Reunion actually follows up on a lot of what was set up in the previous game, making it a pretty lackluster sequel. But I did say I was going to stop being so negative, so we'll talk about it, putting a pin in it for now. Despite me sacrificing her at the end of Life is Strange 1, Chloe Price in this game truly is a sight for sore eyes. Over the years, she's grown to be my favorite of the duo, and I think Deck 9 nailed her writing in Before the Storm, so I didn't really expect them to fumble it in Reunion, and they didn't. I feel like I should address the elephant in the room though, that being Ashley Birch not reprising her role as Chloe, with her instead being played by Rihanna DeVries, the actress who voiced her in Before the Storm. A lot of people were disappointed by this, but I really don't mind it that much. Especially because the essence of the character of Chloe Price is something that's still very much captured through the writing as well as Rihanna's performance. Her attitude, her wit, her priceless charm, it's all there. And I'm not trying to downplay Ashley Birch's performance as Chloe, it's obviously iconic, and I'm also a fan of hers outside of Life is Strange. However, I think any fictional character can live beyond one actor. It happens all the time, especially in video games. It's just all about getting it right on paper and in the performance. Not saying that it's easy, but I am saying Deck 9 pulled it off, twice now. So yeah, Chloe in Reunion sounds great, she looks great, she's still very much herself, just more mature. which is to be expected all things considered. As for Max and Chloe's dynamic, it's pretty rock solid. It's very interesting seeing these two come back together, seeing how they've changed as individuals and how those changes impact the way they interact with one another. But regardless, once they both get comfortable, it's like no time has passed. I'm sure we all have at least one person in our lives who we have this kind of relationship with. It was very nice to see, and the thing is, it all feels very natural, not nostalgia baity. Every other line of dialogue isn't some sort of reference to previous games, and even when they do reference stuff, it's very casual and doesn't overstay its welcome. The only thing I would call forced, and this is where I lose a lot of guys, I already know, it's Max and Chloe's romance. And I felt this way from the beginning.
Stop!
I did speak to him last night. He told me the whole story. It sounded like Safari 2.0. When I mean Safari 2.0.
Okay, so before we move forward with the video, I feel like I should acknowledge something. In this next part, I talk about how I struggle to buy into Max and Chloe's romance in Life is Strange 1. However, I recently came across a video by one Anna Marie that dives into queer representation in Life is Strange and how its authenticity draws queer players in. It's a very well made and insightful video. I encourage everybody to go check it out after this video. I'll add a card and also link it down below so you can't miss it. I'll admit that in all this, something that I fail to acknowledge is the fact that I am not a queer woman. Never have been. So, of course, I'm not going to view Pricefield through the same lens as someone who has lived similar experiences, or maybe are living similar experiences. So what feels like an underdeveloped romance to me could be everything to someone else. A beacon of relatability that just screams you're not alone. We all need that every now and then, and it's not fair for me, a hetero cisgender male, to come in and misrepresent something so important for a lot of people. I still wanted to keep this next bit in just because the core of how I feel about it is still true, even if a lot of it is rooted in me just simply being a bit of an idiot and failing to read between the lines. I just wanted to insert this addendum here. So odds are you're going to disagree with me heavily throughout this next bit, but hopefully you decide to stick with me. But if you do decide you want to leave, the least you can do is roast me in the comments before you go. It helps with engagement. Oh boy, let's proceed. Life is Strange 1 doesn't set up Max and Chloe's romance very well in my opinion. I can count on one hand how many moments there are in the game that even remotely hint at something romantic between the two, and I'm sorry, but that's just not enough. Max and Chloe are established as best friends. They've been very close since they were children, and I'm not saying it's far-fetched for two friends to eventually fall in love with each other. That's not what I'm saying at all, actually. That's incredibly believable. Disgustingly believable, actually. I just don't buy it when it comes to Max and Chloe simply because of the timeline of events. There's no concrete evidence that any feelings existed between Max and Chloe prior to Max moving to Seattle and ghosting Chloe for 5 years. Now, giving these girls queer identities, it's definitely possible that they just didn't know much about their own sexualities at such a young age. But again, nothing like this is explicitly established. Hell, nothing like this is implicitly established. You could probably make a case for some of Chloe's journal entries in Before the Storm, but it just doesn't give that to me. If anything, it's more implied that Chloe has the hots for Rachel Amber. When Max and Chloe reunite, it's clear that Chloe harbors some resentment towards Max for ghosting her for so long, especially considering she did it while Chloe was grieving her father. On top of Max and Chloe's main goal throughout the game being to find out what happened to Rachel. And this all happens within the span of a few days, mind you. Once again, it's realistic that Max and Chloe could develop feelings for one another during this time. Trauma bonds are a thing. However, something being realistic doesn't necessarily mean it makes sense for it to happen in the particular story being told. There's so much more going on in this game that a Max and Chloe romance was always going to be undercooked at best. A lot of people make it seem like Max and Chloe falling in love is the definitive route that the story should take. But I strongly believe that Max and Chloe rekindling their friendship is just as emotionally captivating as a romance between the two. But in Life is Strange Reunion, it feels like the platonic version of Max and Chloe's relationship is completely invalidated, and I really don't like that. It's like the complete opposite of Life is Strange 1, where in that game it feels like Max and Chloe being friends makes the most sense for the story being told. But in Reunion, Max and Chloe not having a romantic history makes everything feel off. It no longer feels like best friends reconnecting after a long time. It feels like two former lovers who have the potential to rekindle what once was. This is part of what I meant earlier when I said Reunion just feels like it was conceived with Chloe's Bay ending in mind, with everything else feeling like an afterthought. Max and Chloe's romance is so heavily baked into this game that even if you didn't romance Chloe in the past and chose to sacrifice her, the game still gives you the option to kiss her. Twice. And I know technically it can't happen the first time regardless because they fall off the boat, but still, the second time they gave me the option, it had me shook. And I ain't gonna lie, I almost went for it. There was just so much damn romantic tension that I found it hard not to, but I had to stay strong and double down. I was not about to let this game convert me. Better believe I did it on the second playthrough though. There was even a part in one of those podcast collectibles during Max's trip at the Abraxas party where the host makes this comment.
Still unknown after a day and a half because Max keeps taking breaks for long, winding conversations with her bad girl ex, Chloe.
Ex-friend? Contrary to popular belief, folks, they are just good friends.
Not according to my fan art.
This felt like a very cheeky move made by the writers, practically acknowledging how much Max and Chloe's relationship resembled that of a romantic one. And I know this all sounds like me complaining, and I kind of am, but I also think Max and Chloe are cute as fuck in Reunion. I mean, this scene in the basement alone just warmed my heart and put the biggest grin on my face. It's so sweet.
Hey. It's all gonna be okay. I'm right here.
For now. That's how it works. You drive your truck back into my life. We have a few incredible days together. And then you're gone. And I have to learn how to live without you. And I don't know if I could do it a second time. I love you so much. But it's not enough. If I really loved you, I'd tell you to leave. To get as far away from me and my powers as... But I can't. We're doomed.
We are not doomed. We're Max and Chloe. I'm sorry. No one should ever have to make the kind of choice you made back then. We were so young. And you had to be so brave for so long. Listen, I don't know if the school will still be standing tomorrow. I don't know how much time but it doesn't matter. Who fucking knows what will happen next? But it will happen to us, okay? Because I'm not going anywhere.
I would be lying straight through my teeth if I said this game didn't have multiple moments that made me go "aww" out loud. This is a prime example of what I mean when I said what I think doesn't always align with how I feel. I think Max and Chloe work better as friends, but Reunion makes me feel far more invested in the idea of something more between the two. It's a really conflicting thing because I wish they would have put more effort into writing a dynamic that actually makes sense for me and the 4 other people who didn't romance Chloe, but then I probably wouldn't have experienced those super warm and intimate scenes that the game so clearly wanted me to. It's a lot for one man to handle, okay? Regardless of my personal gripes, I thoroughly enjoyed seeing Max and Chloe together again, man. It was so fun, and easily the thing that this game got most right. Hey guys, Eric here. I really hope that you're enjoying the video so far. We've still got a bit more to talk about, but I just wanted to take this moment of calm as an opportunity to 1. Remind you all to like and subscribe if you're having a good time, but also to let you know that I now have channel memberships. There's only one level, which at the moment only gives you early access to new videos, as well as access to audio-only versions of video essays like this one, as I tend to finish editing the audio for the projects before I go through and add the visuals. It helps with my workflow, and I know some people like to put on videos like this in the background when they're studying or whatever, so that's perfect for that. I've also been told to have a nice, soothing voice if that helps nudge you a little bit. I eventually want to do members-only videos and maybe even a podcast if enough people actually do join, but that's to be determined. And I just want to make something clear. This isn't me trying to lock content behind a paywall. It's just simply me giving a little something extra back to those who are willing to support me and the channel financially. Hence why I don't plan on making any actual exclusive content until I have members to make it for, if that makes sense. Like I said, it's only one level, so those who join will get all the same perks. And you get all this for a whopping $1.99 a month. Just think about it, that's all I'm saying. Anyway, enough of that annoying YouTuber shit. Let's get back to Life is Strange Reunion.
Get us out of here!
Like I explained back in part 1, the setup of this game involves a fire that breaks out at Caledon, prompting Max to use her powers to go back in time and figure out what causes the fire and hopefully put a stop to it. Cool. While at first I thought it was a bit silly, the whole Inferno thing actually proved itself to be very intense rather quickly. Pulling up to Caledon, being met with first responders panicking and students screaming while there's absolutely nothing you can do is truly unsettling. It almost feels too real. This isn't chaos and destruction caused by a supernatural time storm, this is a very grounded level event caused by people. This is a situation that, unfortunately, any of us could potentially find ourselves in. So automatically we want to do everything in our power to keep this from becoming a reality. Again, like I said earlier, preventing this Inferno is pretty much what drives this plot. It's actually quite simple. It reminds me a lot of True Colors in the way that the game uses a mystery as a means to explore the main character's interpersonal struggles as well as their relationships. Life is Strange 1 and Double Exposure do this same thing, but those games also have a lot more going on, which can make them feel a bit less focused. Double Exposure in particular is just a convoluted mess, but we've already been over that. I threw a lot of shade at Double Exposure for reusing major beats from Life is Strange 1, and Reunion kind of does the same thing. Well, not really, it does with one main thing. That being Max and Chloe reconnecting after a long time while working to solve a mystery before a catastrophic event set to happen in a few days' time. Weirdly though, this just works for me. It feels different enough, not just in the specific circumstance, but also with this being a Max and Chloe game. It's no longer just Max's POV we're experiencing. Chloe has a whole separate storyline dealing with the combined memories of two timelines from when Max merged them at the end of Double Exposure, which I actually don't think I've mentioned in this video yet, and I'm honestly not even sure I want to open that can of worms, because a lot of that timeline merging stuff doesn't make sense to me, but it doesn't really matter that much in the grand scheme of things. The important part is what this does for Chloe and Sophie's respective arcs, but we'll get to that. Max and Chloe not being tied to one another throughout the entire investigation like they are in Life is Strange 1 allows Reunion to feel familiar while still retaining an identity of its own, which is something they do a really good job with in a lot of aspects, come to think of it. Yeah, Reunion uses a lot of the same locations from Double Exposure, but you experience them in a different way. You get to step into Max's world and navigate it through the lens of Chloe Price. Seeing the way she interacts with characters like Lucas and Reggie was a lot of fun, and I especially like the bonds that she forms with Moses and Amanda, who are also two very important people to Max. I found those relationships to be very compelling. It makes sense that Chloe would mesh well with these two characters because, in a way, they represent two sides of her personality. Moses being the science enthusiast slash nerdy side, and Amanda being the bold, tomboyish music head side. Notably, her and Amanda had some great interactions throughout the game, which was a pleasant surprise. Getting into the actual mystery though, what happens? Why is Caledon attacked to begin with? Well, here's where it gets a little bit complicated. Life is Strange in a nutshell, am I right? So at the start of the game, we're only given a couple leads to go off of. One is a flyer for a protest being led on campus called Loretta's March, implying that she was involved somehow. The other being some sketchy Abraxas graffiti around campus, making our dear Reggie a person of interest, as he's now the president of Abraxas, which I actually found rather surprising, but considering Diamond took off with Sophie sometime between games, it makes sense that Reggie would end up being the one to fall into that role. And the Diamond thing is something we'll touch on in the next part of this video, because it's not important to the current story, but I can't just not talk about it, that'd be crazy. Luckily, Loretta and Reggie are both Max's students, so she questions Loretta about her potential march on campus during class, but Loretta legitimately doesn't know what the hell she's talking about, as we later come to realize that Loretta's march wasn't something that was led by Loretta, but rather for Loretta after her death in the Abraxas house demolition, the one that Max saved her from later that night. What we do find out is that Loretta is also investigating Abraxas for different reasons, and after we listen in on Reggie's shady phone call, we don't get much, but from the sounds of it, someone's got Reggie doing their dirty work, something having to do with the Fremont house and so-called Hall of Secrets. During class, Max also comes across some ominous graffiti targeting Caledon's new president, Owen Teller, who honestly seems like a bit of a prick, so this could have been done by anybody. Later that night at the Snapping Turtle, Max asks around to see who might know something about a potential threat to Caledon. Come to find out, the fallout from the storm left many a Lakeport residents pretty unhappy with Caledon, considering President Teller is essentially using the storm as an opportunity to buy up more of the town in order to expand Caledon. It's giving heavy Prescott vibes. Naturally, this can only lead to further displacement of people who are affected by the storm. giving a number of Lakeport residents reason to have it out for Caledon, including the man, the myth, the legend, Lucas Colmenero, as well as a couple of new faces, those being Joey Powell and Ren Landry. But which one of them is angry enough to set fire to Caledon's campus? But that's just the surface of it all, because after Max and Chloe do further digging into the Fremont house, they find out that the reason why Reggie and Owen were being so weird about it is because Owen tasks Reggie with destroying something called the Innermost Secret. As it turns out, this secret is the remains of a former Caledon student who tragically died during his Abraxas initiation after accidentally slitting his own throat during the sacrifice. The student's name was Ian Thorne. What makes all this even crazier than it already was is the revelation that Yasmin used to be part of Abraxas and was there the night Ian died. And not only was she there, but she also played a major role in covering up that poor kid's death. But how does this all connect? What does it have to do with the fire? Well, that guy Ren? Yeah, he's more than just a disgruntled townie. His dad was Ian Thorne, and to avenge his late father, he plans to set fire to the school that indirectly caused his father's untimely death. Now, if you're not an idiot like me, you were able to easily piece together that Ren was the one who set fire to Caledon's campus. But listen, I gotta be honest, Amanda vouching for him did kind of throw me off his scent a little bit. But I think that's just meant to be one of those you never truly know someone kind of things. So yeah, Ren succeeded in his plan and started fucking shit up. Oh boy, let's hope Max had better luck stopping the fire at the Abraxas house.
Please hurry, it's...
Ah, shit. So yeah, turns out the Abraxas explosion was caused by Vin. And I didn't find this out until my second playthrough, but he did it to help cover Yasmin's ass. Again, dude, what is it about this woman that has you in such a chokehold? Like, I get it, she helped you with your career, but brother, you have got to gain some self-respect. First that whole thing with Maya, and now this? All things considered, Vin really is the most obvious choice here. I just really didn't want to believe that it was him because I want so desperately to like Vin. But these games just seem like they keep going out of their way to make him a piece of shit. For once, I just thought that maybe Vin wouldn't be on BS, but I was giving the man too much credit. It also doesn't really help that bro was in the game for all of 10 minutes leading up to the fire. It just feels off. Regardless, I accused Owen my first playthrough, and this mistake ended up costing the poor guy his life. What a shame. So yeah, everything went to absolute shit for me, but even still, none of this explains how the observatory went up in flames. Interestingly, the observatory fire is the only one that remains constant, so even if you make all the right choices, that building is going up. Why, you ask? Well, during a confrontation between Chloe and Safi, the two are temporarily blipped into the mind paradox that they share, or whatever. Safi drops a lit cigarette into a bin and it catches fire. Yeah, it's a little bit anticlimactic, but like I said earlier, the stuff with Chloe and Safi is really what's at the core of this part, so we'll ignore how silly the source of the fire itself actually is for now. This part is important because of what it does for Chloe and Safi, particularly Safi, as this could be the end of the road for her depending on how you play it. But what I really like is how it highlights Chloe and Safi's similarities beyond just their connection to Max. Safi is essentially the old Chloe, brash, reckless, angry at the world for all the hardships she's had to endure. But unlike Safi, Chloe doesn't have powers. Experiencing these feelings while having superpowers is a very dangerous combo, which is something that Safi spends a large portion of these games struggling to understand. Safi grew up navigating her powers all alone. Daniel had Sean, Alex had Steph and Ryan, and Max had Chloe. Safi had no one there to help her, to challenge her, to guide her in a different direction, until Max. Which is why she has such a hard time fully understanding the weight of her actions across Double Exposure and Reunion. Which is funny because earlier in the game she calls out Max for not taking into account how using her powers affects those around her, particularly those she cares about. It's the kettle calling the coffee black. Or however that saying goes. I don't know, maybe I should just stop after that whole broken clock thing earlier. Safi doesn't always recognize the malice behind her actions because to her, they're justified since there's always someone worse, whether that be Lucas, her mom, or whoever. The lens through which Safi views the world is skewed, resulting in a heavily flawed and slightly self-centered person, all traits that were once possessed by the one and only Chloe Price. She was always going to be the only person who could have gotten through to her, aside from maybe Moses, but she never really gave him the opportunity. Lucky for me, this is the one thing I managed not to fuck up on this playthrough, and my Chloe was able to talk Sophie out of giving up. And so, after snapping back to reality and finding themselves in the thick of it, Chloe, Sophie, and Moses are helped up to the roof by Max, who, by this point, has pushed her powers to their absolute limit, and continues to do so when Chloe falls from the roof in a kind of cheesy but also powerful scene where Max stops at absolutely nothing to rescue her best friend. It's insane how much she pushes it, and I honestly thought her going that hard was going to kill her, I really did. But like I said back in part 2, there aren't really any consequences to Max using her powers in this game, and that kind of sucks because I feel like they really could have done something with that here, but they didn't. They could have faded to black and had Max wake up in the hospital, surrounded by her found family in Lakeport as Embers in the Sky by Holly Humberstone plays in the background. I don't know, I feel like something like that would have made me cry. But even still, I'm not ashamed to admit that what we did get still brought tears to my eyes.
Do you still remember when we were younger, before this world of ours ran out of time? Somehow it slips past. You can't trust an hourglass. I was banking on forever, but forever was a lie. It all turned to ash in the night. Pull me out of the dark. Say the word and I will run right back to the start. Ain't it strange how the time turns? This is not the world we knew before I knew you in another life. Are we just embers in the sky? How the hell did you grow up in a world you've no control of? You just run into the chaos of it all. And you gotta go with the rise and the fall, down to the luck of the draw. Pull me out of the dark. Say the word and I will run right back to the start. Ain't it strange how the time turns? This is not the world we knew before I knew you in another life. Are we just embers in the sky?
Admittedly, I made some bad calls on my first playthrough, and it resulted in a few characters losing their lives. On the bright side, however, relationships were mended and Max's core circle remains intact. Even still, I think it makes perfect sense for Max and Chloe to get away from Lakeport for a while, and, like Caledon's campus, continue to rebuild from the trauma they've both endured over the years. But not before Max receives a phone call from Diamond. Now, obviously this game hadn't completely forgotten about her, she's been mentioned plenty, but this bit did get me thinking about all the loose ends from Double Exposure that weren't addressed in Reunion. Things like Reggie seeing himself from the other timeline, or the truth behind Alderman's existence, or lack thereof. It felt like Double Exposure was setting up something bigger with these things, but they ultimately amounted to nothing. But at the very least they are addressing Diamond and her whereabouts. They also pretty much confirmed that she does indeed have powers of some sort, but she didn't reveal what they are yet. I say yet because there's no way they honeydick us for 2 games without any actual plan to go anywhere with that storyline. Square Enix and Deck 9 pretty much confirmed that Life is Strange Reunion is the send-off for Max and Chloe, which has led many to believe that after this, the franchise is going to return to a more anthological approach. However, this weirdly vague phone call between Max and Diamond makes me strongly believe that Diamond will be the next entry's protagonist, and this honestly makes me feel a bit conflicted because Though I've been hoping for a Life is Strange game featuring a black protagonist for a while now, I kind of wish the series would have come up with something completely fresh. I feel like Max, Sophie, and Diamond all having powers is forced. Like I said in my double exposure video, statistically that must mean powers are far more common than we think, which kind of weakens it as a concept for me. Sure, you can point out that David Madsen by himself has met 2 people with powers. I mean, what are the odds of that? But even still, the older entries did a good job of upholding the illusion that these powers were a rarity, things that were only born from really deep-rooted anguish. There's a reason why these games reference real-world popular culture and current events. It's because the world of Life is Strange is supposed to closely resemble our own. To get you thinking, what if there low-key are people out there with superpowers? They may not be from outer space or flying around in capes. They're just regular people living their lives, enduring the same trials and tribulations that any human could. This is something that was established in the very beginning. There's a reason why that first game has something called the Everyday Heroes Contest. And I don't really like the idea of these stories continuing down a more larger-than-life path. Whatever the Life is Strange franchise has in store for us moving forward, my hope is that they don't stray too far from what made these games resonate to begin with. Because it was never just Max and Chloe. It was the human condition. But I suppose all we can do is wait and see what the future holds. Life is Strange Reunion had a lot to live up to, and I can't truthfully say that it doesn't deliver in some aspects. However, it still failed to convince me that it even deserves to exist. Max and Chloe got the fairy tale end that fans wanted so desperately, and while it is sweet, it still fails to be anywhere near as impactful as either of the 2 endings of Life is Strange. But regardless, Reunion is a game that was never trying to live up to the original. It was never trying to be as impactful or even as memorable. And as someone who never wanted a direct continuation of the first game, there's a lot to dislike about Reunion. But somehow, it's a game that I not only had a lot of fun with, but felt something while experiencing it. And isn't that what good art is supposed to do? Thanks for watching.
I've been losing touch, trying to shake a feeling, everything at once. Listen, could it be? Did we meet in a past life? Meet in a past? Did we meet in a past life? You and I.
Hey guys, I just wrapped up editing the video and I just wanted to hop on here and say thank you to those of you who have made it this far. I really appreciate you watching the whole video. It means a lot, truly. This project took me a long time to finish. I feel like I say that about every video I say I make at this point, but genuinely, I was supposed to have this thing out back in April. I had started working on the script shortly after I finished the game in March. I wrote over half the script and then just dropped it because I ran into trouble with my motivation to make videos for a while. I saw a decline in viewership and it honestly made me lose sight of why I even started doing this to begin with. It's because I love video games and I love writing and storytelling and being creative, and making videos like this one is a great way for me to scratch that creative itch. But I am so glad to have this done. I know there are a few people who have been waiting to hear my thoughts on Life is Strange Reunion, so I hope that this video is able to find you and that it doesn't disappoint. but I gotta say I'm pretty proud of how this one came out in the end. I'm gonna be honest, I can never tell if a video is actually going to be good until I'm deep in the editing process. I just be going off straight vibes most of the time. But like I always say, at the end of the day, I don't know what the heck I'm talking about. I'm just a guy with an opinion, and now I want to hear yours. It can be about Reunion, it can be about the video itself, it can be about whatever. I just like hearing from you guys. And depending on the amount of engagement on a video, I may not reply to everyone, but I do in fact read every single comment. You better believe it. But anyway, I should probably stop talking. You've been hearing me talk this whole video, and I'm sure it's probably gotten old by now. So that's all from me, and until next time, I'll catch you guys later.